This episode is brought to you by CBS All Access. If you don't already subscribe to CBS All Access, please use our affiliate link by going to talkthroughmedia.com/CBS. Using our affiliate link gives us a little credit, which helps us to keep bringing you great content. U.S. residents only. Hello, and welcome to episode 7 of the Star Trek Lower Decks podcast. I'm Brian.
And I'm Kyle.
And after some technical difficulties, we had some audio issues. So this is take number 4 of our start. We'll be covering season 1, episode 7 of Star Trek Lower Decks, titled Much Ado About Boimler. But before we get started, we have one little bit of feedback from last week, season 1, episode 6, titled Terminal Provocations. So let's open hailing frequencies.
All right, it comes from Brian from Hawaii, and he said, I really didn't like episode 6 with Badgie. That was a step too far off the deep end of Star Trek norms. Not only that, it wasn't funny or tasteful. Overall, I like Lower Decks, but this episode was a low point for me. Oh, sorry, Brian. I kind of liked Badgie.
See, for me, Badgie reminded me enough of Clippy that I got a strange satisfaction from it. That it worked. But yeah, I mean, for me, it was not my favorite episode. I don't think it's my lowest rated either, but not my favorite. So I agree with you to an extent. So anyway, that's the only bit of feedback from last week that we got later. So straight into this week's episode, season 1, episode 7, titled Much Ado About Boimler, written by M, the initial M, Willis. So I don't know what the deal is there. It could be that there's another writer with the same first name. I don't know. That happens sometimes. M is a story editor on Star Trek Lower Decks, directed by, for the third episode now, Barry J. Kelly, the post-supervising director, who has also directed season 1, episodes 1 and 4. So the description from CBS.com is as follows. Mariner tries to impress her best friend from Starfleet Academy, who is now a visiting captain. Boimler is sent to a Starfleet medical ship after a transporter accident puts him out of phase. And that is TVPG with language and violence. Had the star date of 57752.6 with the air date of September 16th, 2020. And it was available at 2:06 a.m. Eastern Time. And I started watching it right then. It had a runtime of 25 minutes and 45 seconds. So, Kyle, what did you think of this episode?
I actually kind of enjoyed it. It's like I feel like my ratings have been pretty stable this season. So it's like 8 alien horse bites out of 10.
Yeah, I like this one more than the last several. So I'm going to give it 8.5. It's just cosmetic. Out of 10.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was really funny. Okay, so we have some listener ratings.
Yeah, and the first one comes from Edwin from Arizona, and he gave it an 8.2, The Dog.
LT from NC says he's going to give it 9 out of 10. I'm not evil. I just laugh that way. And then the last is Wes from Minnesota, who also gives it an 8.5. Times you say, boy me up out of 10.
I wanted to use that too, but I just let Wes take it.
Yeah. All right. So we have some yeses.
Yes.
And the first one comes from Edwin from Arizona. He says characters mixing it up on different storylines. Yeah.
Wes from Minnesota says Freaks Fight Back. That whole entire thing with Boimler, Tendi, and the Freaks.
Yep.
All right. So those are the only 2 yeses that we got from listeners this week, although we may have some in voicemail. So, Kyle, what do you have for yeses?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was, again, kind of hard to like try to like, oh, here's my like most like my one next thing I left about the whole thing, but it's just like the dog. I just enjoyed the weird things that the dog was doing. Like I thought like when it turned, like it was walking by Boimler and Mariner, and it was like, and it turned into that metal cube.
Yes.
I just like laughed. Too. I was like, okay, that's hilarious.
I had that one too. Yeah.
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 And then the dog talking at the end and like floating up in the air. Like, to me, that didn't surprise me. I was like, of course it's going to talk.
Yep.
But I don't know. It kind of reminded me, I don't know if you've seen the YouTube, like that spot from Charlie the Unicorn. I got this whole like, oh, Charlie. I don't know. If you've seen that, then you would totally understand, because I felt like that whole like ending really was kind of very similar. Yeah. So I was kind of like, oh, okay, that's funny. The other yes, I guess it was kind of stupid, I guess. I don't know. But I mean, I liked the whole Division 14 bit.
Yeah.
It was just like, I love that it, like, you know, we have Section 31. We know that there's like these like, I don't remember, but like in Voyager, you know, they always have like, oh, it's like whoever's dealing with like the time frame. Like, you know, they're correcting all the problems that Voyager would screw up in the timeline. So it was just fun to see. It's like, oh yeah, the Division of Unsolvable Space Illnesses and Science Mysteries.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I loved that whole bit. It was entertaining and fun. And also I thought it was like because we never got his name, but the division specialist is like, I'm the division specialist, but the way he talked and just like the way it all kind of came across, I felt like he was Jafar from The Lion King.
Yeah.
It's like that whole part just felt very Disney villain. Like I just like the voice and everything. And I don't know who the actor was. And like, I meant to go back and like see who was on the credits, if there was any, because some of the voices in this episode from some of the special guests, or like the people, you know, from the characters, not of our, you know, the main part, I felt like I heard some familiar voices.
Well,
but the
funny thing is, I actually had this down in the notes. Fred Tagliatore, I think is how you say his name, who usually plays Lieutenant Shax. Of course, we see his character this week, but he didn't have any speaking parts. Well, he actually played the Division 14 officer.
Okay.
So he actually voiced it, and we actually had a couple of those kind of things where people were playing multiple characters this week. So
well, and I didn't put this in my notes either, but I'm like, Mariner's friend, the captain, Ramsey,
right?
Like her voice sounded so familiar, and I just have a chance to like go and see like what her credit was, because I'm like, I've heard that voice.
Yeah,
like, I don't know what it was from, like, but I don't know who it was.
Memory Alpha lists it as Tox Olagundoye as who does it. I don't know that actress's, but her voice did sound familiar as well. I was curious as well to check that out. But at least according to Memory Alpha, that's who they have listed.
Okay. Yeah, it's a familiar voice, or just maybe just the way it was, like, whatever. I just felt like it's like, there's that. I feel like I've heard that voice before, but I'm, you know, that could just be just the way she did it.
Yeah.
That was it.
As far as the voices, I don't have this in my lists of yeses, but I want to make a standout. Whoever was playing the character that was the command ensign with accelerated growth and reverse aging, that was brilliant. So here the character is like alternating between this like really old man and this really young sounding character, and I thought it was hysterical. So anyway, I had to point that out.
Yeah.
So I thought it was funny that the three, captain, commander, and the security guy, their secret mission was to deliver roulotte seeds, and that they may be called upon to plant the roulotte seeds. Like, how kind of a crazy thing is that? Anyway, the side effect of Boimler, I mentioned it in my rating, is just cosmetic.
Yeah.
you hardly notice it. And I was just thinking of like, that might be something LaForge would say.
Yeah, that's totally
yeah. So anyway, I thought that was hysterical. I got a real kick, and it's kind of the picture that I picked as my backdrop that's playing, which people could see if they could see our video, which they can't. I mean, I don't know. I may start publishing that. We'll see. If you guys want to see our raw stuff today, maybe you won't want to. I may cut out, if I were to do that, I'd cut out the first few minutes, but lots of technical issues there. But anyway, the image that I picked for my backdrop is Boimler in the transporter, in the turbolift, and we see the bridge officers from the Oakland and Mariner, looking at him. And right after that, he slumps over and he's got this like totally rejected look on his face.
Yeah.
I just thought it was funny. And then, he goes to sick bay and he's so despondent, and he says like, and they can make me a real boy again. I thought that was funny. So
yeah,
you mentioned the dog. I also had to find it funny how Tendi was smart enough to somehow create a dog, which I guess you could probably put that in the not good enough section, but let's just say that, okay, she could create a dog, but has almost no knowledge of what is normal for a dog.
I know. I thought that was funny at the end.
Yeah.
It's like,
and also calls the dog. That reminds me of The Walking Dead and Daryl Dixon, who calls the dog. So similar in that way.
Yeah.
But anyway, there were a lot of things that the main difference that I found with this episode versus the last few is that it wasn't trying so much to get us with the little quips from TNG and Voyager and DS9. They're there, but they're not like trying so hard. And to me, I think that was better. Like, I certainly appreciated them, and we'll talk about them in a few minutes, but I thought that it was trying less hard. And for that, the episode worked a lot better for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So now we have our no's. No! And we only got the one no. So why don't you read it?
Yeah, from Western Minnesota. He said, Durga, not a very good name for a Vulcan. Doesn't it sound more like a Klingon name?
It does. I didn't find that name was appropriate, but I think we also have to start calling this out. Like, for example, what is it with them giving these human names to Trill? Every Trill that we've seen has had a human name. I believe this one had the name of Otessa Warren. So maybe she married a human male and Warren is by marriage, or, maybe she's got a human parent or grandparent or something and it carries forward. But still, it's like the names that they're using on this show are kind of weird. And another example is the Rigelian. That's the guy that, I don't know, he looked like something out of a Marilyn Manson video or something.
Yeah.
Apparently that's a Rigelian. Okay. So his name was Drew Pratchett. So he's a Rigelian, but he's got a very very human name.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going on there, if they're giving the names and then the animation is kind of drawing in the characters and then they're not going back in to change their names. That might be the case. And considering the accelerated production time, maybe that's what's happened here. Maybe they won't continue this on season 2, but it's just weird.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand it. Like, you would expect a Trill to have a Trill name. And likewise, I mean, you could maybe suggest that Otessa is a Trill first name, like Jadzia or Ezri. So maybe Otessa is a Trill first name, but definitely Warren is not. So I don't know. And it was Barnes, the one that Rutherford had a date with on the first episode. So, and she was Trill as well. So anyway, it's weird. I don't understand it. I wish that they would kind of give alien names, just,
or stick with the, like, I mean, I guess that's kind of like, maybe that's because we know that Trills, like, they have their name and it always precedes whatever the name is.
Right.
So it's like, oh yeah, Jadzia Deck, Ezri Dax. Yeah. So it's kind of like, even though we don't see that, it's like having a stranger name at the end would have been like, oh, well, that would make sense because you're a Trill. So it's like, oh, then you're a, whatever that name is of that line. And this just was kind of like, I kind of agree. I was just like, oh, it's kind of a name,
Right.
It wasn't enough to be like, to give that, like, oh, obviously that's a Trill. So that's like a, whatever name, like Aurelian or whatever whatever the name was. But it's like, it could have been like Jane Aurelian or whatever. And we would have gotten that and be like, oh, well, that's a Dax, or basically like a Dax. So I don't know. I wonder how much of that is kind of, you made a good point in the sense that it's like, yeah, stuff had to get kind of like fixed up and mixed up or like whatever because of COVID. So it's like, I don't know, maybe it was just kind of like, screw it, we just have to do this and just get it out the door.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Curious.
It's not. If I belong to Larry Nemechek's Portal 47 group, and I know there's at least one of us that listens to the podcast that's also a member. And I think there's a few of us that listen. Anyway, I was kind of critical about the show on his Portal 47 recording on Wednesday. But I wanted to make the point that the things that I was criticizing the show about, they're nitpicking. They're not like major things, like pointing out the names of characters and why wouldn't they use a Trill name? That's nitpicking. That's not a major thing, right? Criticizing Discovery for making Klingons that look nothing like Klingons that we've ever seen before, that's a pretty major thing to me. So it's worth gauging that. It's worth saying that most of the criticism that I've had about this show has been on some nitpicky things. And on the whole, I think that they've gotten this show down pat. I think it totally honors the TNG, DS9, and Voyager era like it's supposed to. It may not be everyone's cup of tea, and I understand that. But in terms of it honoring those shows, I think it's right on the money. So my criticism of it is minor. Like, I can understand taste. It's not going to be to everyone's taste, but it's certainly, I think, it's a decent show. I mean, I really enjoy it. And it's not my favorite Trek. It probably never will be my favorite Trek. But we've had months now of no Star Trek, during COVID. And for that matter, not much new TV, period. And this has been great to have it come back. So
yeah.
Anyway,
no, agree.
So you have some no's.
Well, and just like you're saying, it's like a little nitpicking because it's like, I don't really have like, it's kind of hard to really kind of like try to like judge the show too much because it's like it's kind of just all it's a lot of fun when you
Yeah.
just really enjoy it and
Mhm.
just not try to nitpick and this and that.
Mhm.
But of course, we're doing a podcast about it,
Yeah.
I thought that energy alien at the end that was taking over the Rubicon it just reminded me basically what we saw in the episode Moist Vessel. The
Okay.
terraforming ooze. It was just like, it's like, oh, it's bursting through every deck, it's like breaking
Right.
everything apart, and they're all like trying to run away and this and that. And it's kind of like I just felt like that was the same thing that we've seen destroying the ship in that certain way.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I guess in the end, though, it was kind of nice, I guess, to see it turn into like the space jelly that we saw in TNG's Farpoint Station.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of like, oh, okay, that's cute. That was fun. It was like, there's the nod. There's the TNG nod right there.
And I didn't see that coming. Like it didn't.
Yeah, it was like, that was like the very, at the credits at the end. It was just like, oh, okay, got it.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a similar kind of thing. I didn't see that until the very end. And
yeah,
it's like, oh yeah, that kind of looks like a one of those aliens from Farpoint. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but then that's like where it's like, oh, okay, the connection. Yay. That's cool. But it was just like the whole, like, we just saw this like 3 episodes ago or whatever, where it's like, oh, the whole ship's being destroyed. The floor's breaking. Everybody's like running off and like, we're like, the whole ship's going to be destroyed. And yet they solved it by, whatever the green gas, whatever they figured out that like made it go inert and go away. But anyways, I just thought it was like, oh, it was very similar. And I was like, yay. Okay, fine. Nitpicky. And then the other part, which actually I saw it when I went back to go look for it because I thought it was really weird. That was like, so the alien energy thingy like feeds off of power.
Yeah.
And they were all hiding from it and they're like, whatever. But then I went back to go look at it because I was kind of like, well, this doesn't really make sense. But then Captain Ramsey said it fed off electricity.
Right.
And so I was like, okay. And so I was like, well, how is electricity different than like the warp core or like any energy source that is in this whole realm? And then, so like Captain Ramsey used her phaser to save Captain Dayton that was being like the tentacles came out and grabbed her to try to pull her in. I think it was like Mariner was trying to help her. And then Ramsey uses her phaser, and then the phaser made it like let go.
Right.
And I just kind of was all like, wait, I'm like, it's feeding off energy and you use an energy weapon against it. And that somehow made it stop. And I was like, I just didn't understand it at all. And so I put this in my note because it was like, especially when I went back and it was like, oh, but she said it feeds off electricity. And I was like, okay, electricity seems so not 2380. like that's not, that really did not make any sense to me at all. Energy is energy, especially in this, in Star Trek. So yeah, that was basically, I was just like, I don't know. That just kind of made no sense, but hey, whatever.
Yeah, I think that was a good thing to bring up because I just looked it up on Memory Alpha and they don't mention anything about electricity. And I agree with you, that seems very not 2380. I think they should have said blank energy, like some kind of energy.
Yeah, like something that like, oh, we have I mean, it didn't even have to go that far, but it's like just like we see in like Discovery where they find the dark matter and then like whatever, and like that has this whole crazy property that they actually use to like suck away like fragments or whatever. But it's like something dark energy, something like that would have made a little more sense because we don't understand what that energy is, and so a standard phaser would be somewhat different, but just like electricity, it's like that didn't make any sense at all to me.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I think, like I said, I looked it up on Memory Alpha, and there is no mention of electricity. It only mentions the energy it needs enough to keep it alive. So the bandy or whatever, we're giving it energy, but they don't mention anything about electricity. So I think they should have said something about what kind of energy and not specifically mention electricity. So
True.
I would say this is slightly more than a nitpick, but not too much more. But it's a valid thing to bring up. So, okay, so I will do these out of order. So Captain Dayton, pretty much a wussy. Yeah, I guess it was all to show Mariner get all badass and punch her out, just to neutralize her. But from a psychological perspective, to be a captain and to do that kind of thing, I thought was a little unrealistic. But at the same time, like I get the idea that these California class starships don't necessarily have the best captains in the fleet. So I think Captain Freeman is up there and she'll probably get a better command at some point. But we're seeing that they're not like the A team. The Osler, the NX 75300, the USS Osler. I didn't buy the design of this starship. Now, that's another kind of nitpicky thing, but it reminded me of the Romulan scout ship that we saw in TNG. So it looked more like a Romulan ship than it did a Federation ship. Certainly not in color, but it just didn't look at all like anything you'd see from the Federation. So I had a little bit of a problem with that. Lastly, so exactly how much of a is Mariner, and why is she up so much? Like, obviously, even Captain Ramsey called her on it, but she was screwing things up so much to the point where, like, forgetting tricorders and just everything she was doing in this episode, it's really stretching it to me beyond what I think it should be stretching it. And I don't know. I don't like it too much for that.
Yeah.
I think, they could be doing a better job of explaining it. Maybe we'll finally get the answers that we need in a few episodes. But until then, it's just kind of annoying. So.
Yeah. And I left this for my ending comment, so I'll just go into it more then.
All right. Fair enough. Okay, so that's it for our no's for this week. So let's move on to our not good enoughs.
Not good enough, damn it! Not good enough!
And we only got one not good enough this week from listeners. It was from Wes from Minnesota. He just says, Mariner, the whole storyline. Now, I don't know if he means Mariner storyline. I assume that's what he meant. But I guess he didn't like it. So, or thought it wasn't good enough. Yeah. You had one?
Yeah, the dog. I wanted to see do more crazy tricks. I love the part where it was like its head split open and the eyes came out as bats or whatever. But I was like, I wanted to see more of that because it had all the opportunity to like basically freak them all out.
Yeah. And it was kind of funny that originally I thought that she was just missing the things that the dog was doing. And, that's, one kind of comedic thing they can do. But by the end, it seemed like she just didn't know.
That's not what a dog's supposed to do.
Yeah. And especially like when the actual dog licks her face and she reacts to it in a negative way. Yeah. So my thing is Division 14. So it's Section 31, but why is it Division 14? Why isn't it Section 14? Now, ironically or not, maybe it was part of this. Section 31 claimed to be sanctioned by the original Starfleet Charter. Article 14, Section 31, of which allowed for extraordinary measures to be taken in times of extreme threat. Maybe Division 14 is part of Section 31. I don't know, but I thought that was, maybe they did that like as a sort of back-ended type of reference to Section 31, but why couldn't it just be Section 14 or something like that? But anyway.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting, I guess. So
no, it was like all my notes. I kept like writing Section 14, Section 14, Section 14, or I guess Division 13. I think actually is what it was. Or
no,
14?
It was
anyway,
14. It was 14.
14, yeah. But I was writing Section 14 in my notes. So no, and I like went back and was like, oh, Division, and then I was like, oh yeah, a Division, like whatever the dude, because he never got his name, but
right.
I was like so conditioned to be like, oh, section, no, Division.
Right. Yeah.
It might have been just a play off that. So,
well, actually, and that type of character is mentioned in one of our voicemails this week. So,
okay.
Yeah. And speaking of that, it is now time to go into our voicemails. So let's again open hailing frequencies. Okay. So our first voicemail is from our legendary now, because we've gotten something from him every single episode as a voicemail. Jeff, X-Force 11, thank you again. Here is his voicemail.
Hello, Star Trek fans. This is Jeff X-Force 11 leaving my feedback about STLD Much Ado About Boimler. So for an episode with that title, you would think it'd be more about Boimler, but it was more about Mariner, in my opinion. And this kind of threw me because I was looking at this episode and how Mariner was acting, and I'm like thinking the story is going to take us in the direction of Mariner is the Boimler to her friends and to the others, and then we get the full out no. She knows exactly what her friend is doing and wants to offer her a job on her ship, and she doesn't want to do it because she wants to take things on her own terms. And I think that's interesting, but I hope that this changes a bit through the series because it will get a bit old if she's always messing up on purpose. I think she needs to find a balance of who she really is, and maybe this episode of being around her friends and standing up and being the kick butt person will change her mind a little bit and we'll start to see some growth. All right, those are my thoughts. X-Force 11 is out.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff, X-Force 11, for your voicemail from North Carolina. And we have another North Carolina voicemail coming up. But yeah, I have to agree with you pretty much on everything you said this week. The title, very deceptive. I thought that it was going to be a Boimler episode, and certainly Boimler was a big part of one of the plots of this episode, but I would argue that it was not the main plot. It was very much a Mariner episode, and I was surprised by that and kind of taken aback.
Yeah.
So...
I agree.
Yeah. So it could have had a more Boimler episode.
Yeah.
As far as, Jeff, what you were saying about doing it on her own terms and messing up on purpose, I agree with you that I hope that this kind of thing is going to be ending soon. It is getting a little old. I think that we need to, and I think actually we're going to get a voicemail that talks about this. I think LT mentions it as well. It's either LT or Fred mentions about how we need to get the story on why it is the way that it is with her. So we'll be hearing more about that in a few minutes, but I just hope that she stops this and eventually learns to get over herself, I guess you could say. Okay, so let's move on to our next voicemail. And that is our good friend Fred from the Netherlands.
Hello, Brian and Kyle. This is Fred from the Netherlands with some feedback for Star Trek Lower Decks Season 1, Episode 7. When Captain Ramsey walked in, my first impression, she was a sister or half-sister of Mariner, and also a daughter of Captain Freeman. But they proved to be just buddies from the Academy. And it also proves that Mariner is not that bad at all. Actually, she was kind of top of her class, because Ramsey said, "We were expecting you would be the first captain of us all." And even the Vulcan says, "Why are you just an ensign?" So there is something very weird in Mariner's psychology, because under stress, she really functions as a good officer. Or is it an officer? Or is it just a Federation person? And that is what she is, and not so much Starfleet. Though the Starfleet philosophy, but not really Starfleet. Perhaps she would do better without a uniform and without ranks. Or is the point that she can't escape her upbringing, being a daughter of an admiral and a captain, whereas she actually wants that? And again, as always, I didn't like the Tandy story so much with the crazy dog. What I did like, of course, is the pad at the beginning with a big symbol of DNA on it. Okay, that was all for this time. Greetings, all the best, Fred from the Netherlands.
I figured you were going to mention that DNA sign. I'm surprised you didn't mention Cast 9, and I know, Fred, you'll mention it next week. But thank you, Fred, for your voicemail. And you made a lot of good points, as you always do. But certainly, I agree with you. And it's funny, we were just talking about this on the last bit of feedback we got on Mariner. And it definitely seems like there are several different psychological factors going on with her. And we're still trying to figure out what they are. But I think escaping her upbringing has something to do with it. But at some point, if she was excelling to that degree in Starfleet Academy, something must have happened for her to put the brakes on things and become this screw up that she is now. And she definitely, it's pretty obvious that, like Ramsey said, she was taking a dive, and she's intentionally being a screw up. But I don't know. I don't understand it, and we've been kind of like dancing around it for 7 episodes now. So I really think that they need to address it head on. We saw the incident at the Quito with her friend getting eaten by the shape changer or whatever, but we don't know beyond that what could have caused her to be such a screw up. So, yeah. And as far as what you're saying, I think that she is a good Starfleet officer. And it's, like I say, there's something, maybe she was given command and she wasn't ready, or maybe she had to send someone to die, like Kobayashi Maru, or like that Wesley Crusher test. And I don't know, but something happened to her that caused her to be a slacker. And we don't know what that is yet. I'm hoping that we'll find out. And I'm also hoping that she gets over it and starts to ascend. And because I would like to see maybe a show end with Boimler and Mariner being captain and first officer, commander, maybe on the Cerritos or maybe somewhere else, but that she get to that point, and we'll see if that happens. But as I've said before, I don't know who would be the captain and who would be the first officer between those two, but it seems to me that a good officer, a good captain, would be the combination of the two. So, yeah, but it's pretty clear that in a crisis, like when she has to drop all that pretense, she's great. and we've seen this before too. We saw it on the episode there with the Captain Durango and the Moist Vessel one.
Yeah.
And we've seen it in bits and pieces on other episodes, and like I say, she just she needs to get over that, I think.
Yeah. No, and I have to agree though, because it's like, it's kind of like, I don't want to bring up another podcast, and if this doesn't make sense or whatever, we'll just cut this out.
Okay.
But like, it's kind of the same pretext where like we were dealing with like Fear of the Walking Dead, where it's all like, oh, they just like say stuff, but yet there's like no context for it, and it's like, and then it just kind of like doesn't, make sense, but then it somehow gets revealed, or, like whatever. It was just like, oh, it's like, you could have totally solved this if you just said this thing, or you told people about this. And I don't want to say that it's like Mariner, we know that she's got some kind of pedigree. It's like she's got a history. She's been through, like, we just see it in this episode where like her friend that she was in the academy with, like, is like, hey, you were the top of your class and this and that. But there's some reason why Mariner is like, I don't want to be a part of that. Like, I'm trying to not be a part of that. And then we see her making all these stupid, like, oh, my boots, they're too big. It's like,
yeah,
like these little things. Like there's something behind,
and not
that.
just one thing. She's doing multiple of them,
right?
And
like she's
I mean, it's pretty obvious that she knew that Ramsey was going to try to recruit her, but to screw up the way that she does, to the degree that she does, is rather, I don't know, it's beyond annoying, really. It's
yeah, well, yeah, and like, and I'll just put it, because I feel like a lot of people are basically kind of saying this. It's like, I felt like this was just the episode that we saw, which was like with Ensign Fletcher, and he was just like all over the place, and then just like was so annoying, and then it just like it got worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And then this episode was like, oh, it's Mariner. And then it was like, she was just making like, oh, I forgot the tricorders. Whoa, it's like, and there should have been like some sound effect where we were like, whoa, like that. I forgot the tricorders. And then, it's like the boots and all the stuff. It's like, we get at the end that like, she was trying to basically, yeah, we get at the end because Captain Ramsey is just like saying like, yeah, it's like, if you like, you stop pretending to be and I'll stop trying to recruit you, and we can start saving people. Deal?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like that's the whole, that was like kind of seemed like that was the whole premise of like this whole storyline.
Yeah.
But at the same time, again, it's just like, we're just seeing kind of like this again.
Yeah.
We don't understand what Mariner's whole MO is. We don't know where she came from. We don't know why she's even doing this. Why is she like, she even says she wants to stay with the lower decks.
Mm-hmm.
She's just like, I just need more time and blah, blah, blah. So if they do not reveal what that is, then this will be a Fear of the Walking Dead situation.
Yeah. And we've seen this kind of thing on The Walking Dead too. And that is one of those TV tropes that I can't stand seeing. It's, where, and we see this, on several different shows. I know you watch the show, so you can relate to this. They do this all the time on Grey's Anatomy, where it's like, if they just told this character this one thing when they had the chance to, everything would be revealed. But no, instead, they don't tell her this. And so she goes and has, adultery with X character instead. I'm thinking of what's her name, Teddy on Grey's Anatomy.
Oh gosh,
yeah. Anyway, but it's just so stupid that they do that, and they do that on The Walking Dead. They do that on Fear of the Walking Dead and Grey's Anatomy and many other shows. But just that whole thing, and I think we even saw this a little bit on Discovery at one point.
Yeah, with the android. I forgot.
Arium?
Like Arium, yeah, like the whole like why, like the whole her dying and like, we barely got to even know her, and then all of a sudden we had one episode, it was like, oh, now she's like got all these problems. I'm like, but we never could connect with that.
Yeah.
But
because we never got to know her.
Right.
But yeah, but I don't like it when TV shows especially do this where they leave out this conversation. They conveniently don't have it, and because of that, this happens and that happens. And you can make the argument that this kind of thing happens in real life, and in fact, this does happen in real life. And I'd even say that this has happened to me, and even recently, like yesterday, kind of thing. But I would just say that it does get a little tiresome when they use that trope. I would just rather things that should be said and not said. But and it's like it's kind of like don't like it's almost kind of frustrating because it's just like look at it from the audience aspect. It's like giving context and like giving kind of like even if it was just like little flashback. We got one of those with Mariner at Deep Space 3 or whatever, that one episode. It's just like a little context can go a long way. Yeah.
So that we can understand where that character's coming from, and then that would put the bigger picture being like, oh, now I understand why she's being ridiculous and almost annoying in this episode.
Yeah.
And it's like when they don't do that and then they leave it to like way like we could have another 3 more episodes before we even get the answer.
Yeah.
It's just like just the little tidbit would help, and then that would not make it so like I'm still just questioning why is this the way it is.
Yeah.
And like I'm like for me to question
right
makes me start thinking like, okay, yeah, this is just crap, and I'm just like I don't want to watch it anymore.
Yeah. And I was just even I'm not going to mention the reference, but I will say this, and I think you'll get it. Season 4 of The Walking Dead, we see this very thing happen, and that sets up something that happens way later on the show with, I'll just say, Carol and Tyrese. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So we have one more voicemail, and this is from LT from NC.
Hi guys, it's LT. I'm going to give you a quick voicemail instead of writing because I just got off work and I'm really just too tired to type. Going to give this one a 9 out of 10. I'm not evil. I just laugh that way. I like this episode. You guys were complaining about the mix last week that it seemed like it was always breaking down to be Tendi and Rutherford and Mariner and Boimler. And this week we got Boimler and Tendi, and Rutherford was pretty much on his own, and Mariner got to run around with the babysitter captain. They're getting better. I mean, I really like this episode because you got to find out about, Division 14. We always wondered where all the medical mishaps went, and now we know. Got to see an Adosian, another animated series deep cut. I'm not bad. It's just a Mila Cochran off. I think the big thing for me this episode was the fact we finally got to find out about Mariner. Obviously, she's been out of the academy for quite a while now, if somebody that's her classmates made captain. So we got a lot of development out of her, kind of figured out that the reason she's a slacker is something must have happened that made her not want to take on responsibility. And I'm sure they're going to get into that because they kind of hinted around it. And maybe that she screws up things because she's purposefully screwing things up. Adds a whole new layer to it. Looking forward to the podcast. Enjoyed this episode. This to me was better than Boimler's love story last week. And with all the little hints and deep cuts and Easter eggs they're throwing in, it's making it, I'm really enjoying it. So this is LT. Take care, guys, and we'll talk to you later.
Well, thank you so much, LT. And it's good to get your voicemail. Certainly not the first time we've gotten your voicemail, but first time for Lower Decks. So thank you so much. And never apologize for giving a voicemail. We love voicemails. They're actually a lot easier to deal with. So hint, hint, all you other people. Send us 50 voicemails. We don't care. Okay, maybe not 50.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where it kind of tips the scales. But so Tendi and Rutherford, not this week. I agree. They did kind of mix up the characters a little bit from how we've seen them. I didn't really understand why Tendi had to be there with the dog, though. I guess maybe because she's like responsible for the dog, but if the dog could talk.
Yeah. The
Dojin that LT mentions is the officer from Division 14. So if that wasn't obvious, and whoever played that, I thought that they were, well, I mentioned before was Fred Tachia Chori. I think I'm saying his name correctly. He's the one that voiced it, and I was trying to figure out who that Rigelian was, but they didn't have that listed. Well, someone by the name, that was Maurice LaMarche was playing that. So I don't know. So good all the way around for that. And the idea of Mariner and the fact that she must have graduated quite a while ago, that's what makes me think that she went to the academy at a pretty young age. And perhaps that explains some of it, because if she is the same age as Boimler, one can assume that it's because of that fact that maybe she got put in a command situation at too young of an age or something. But I don't know. It's at the same time, like, you would think that this would have been counseled out of her, but I don't know, because like I could just see Counselor Troy getting a hold of Mariner and trying to fix her like she kind of does with Barclay. So I don't know. It is a mystery at this point. I guess it's played for comedy's sake, but it's one of those things where we can't play this going on forever. This kind of needs to be identified and explained.
Yeah, and it's like, and I don't want it to be that way either,
right.
Where it's just like, oh, this is just for comedy's sake, and then being like, oh, like even if there was hints there, it was just like, oh, we're just never gonna go there. It's like, well, then, like that's what I'm afraid of. It's like that. It's just like, oh, we're just doing this for that, and not because we have a deeper story to tell. And it's like, I get what this whole Lower Decks seems to be like. We want to do a different play on Star Wars. Sorry, bleep that out. On Star Trek. But it's like, but don't dumb it down, because that's the wrong way to do this.
There's only one thing that I have to say about that.
It's a trap.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm just it's late and
it's okay.
Mixing up my stars.
It's okay.
That's all I have to say. I hope to Lord praise Jeebus that it's not like this, like it's just for comedy's sake.
Yeah, I think so. And I will also say,
it's not true. That's impossible.
Yep.
Nice.
So the other thing I was going to mention is that Boimler definitely wanted to go back to that farm. So, because, he, you mentioned it was actually 2 weeks ago, the Boimler girlfriend thing, but he definitely wanted to go back to whoever wanted to pay attention to him. And, he wasn't sick anymore. And it seemed, I didn't put this in my notes, but the crew that were rescued, their effects definitely seem to go away faster than Boimler's did.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know why that is, but maybe they were able to figure it out from scanning Boimler or something. I don't know. Okay, well, anyway, that is it for our feedback this week. So we're going to now go into the spot the references section. Always fun. The babysitter Jellicoe type. That was kind of fun because that was the whole episode here in many ways. So, of course, the babysitter Jellicoe type refers to the TNG episode Chain of Command, where Captain Edward Jellicoe takes over the captaincy of the Enterprise, while Picard goes on a very similar covert mission. And in the case of that, in this episode, of course, it was the Captain, Ransom, and Shax going on this covert mission, which was a silly covert mission to me. In the case of Chain of Command, instead of it being the first officer, it was Worf, Crusher, and Picard. So instead of like the first officer, it was a doctor, but it also had the security officer and the captain going. And in the case of that episode, it was a secret investigation of the Cardassian planet Celtris 3, which was on the border of Federation space, in search of a research facility that was supposedly working on a metagenetic weapon. And that Picard was there because he studied theta band carrier waves, which I guess was the transmission method or something, while on the Stargazer. Worf was there for muscle, and Crusher was there to locate and destroy any biotoxins they may find. Spoiler from like 28 years ago.
Yep. Sorry, spoiler.
Yeah. There is a mention in here of the time travel police, which we see in Trials and Tribulations on DS9. And of course, they mention Kirk, how he was awful to the time travel stuff. I think that's what it was. And of course, we know that they hated Janeway too for the same thing. Ensign Jenna was exposed to Delta radiation and was wearing was in a chair very similar to Captain Pike. And Anthony looked like the salamander or whatever you would call it, that
lizard baby
that Janeway and Paris were in the Voyager episode Threshold, which had this. That was probably, I think, one of the most
epic. Yeah, so one of the most epic, like this is just like the worst episode.
Yeah,
but it still has a fan base.
It does, and some people love it. And it was, for me, it was one of those like epic failures. It started out so awesome and then ended up like, what?
Lizard babies.
Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking of. It seemed like it just seemed something, out of an acid trip or something. I don't know. But
someone won the Captain Crunch prize and they got to put in their own story, and they made it to make a wish.
And there were, the encounter at Farpoint aliens, which you mentioned before. And there were several different, we mentioned the Adosian, the Rigelian, I believe. These are aliens from the animated series. So it was good to see them. And, those were kind of deep cuts, stuff that you may not have noticed. But like especially the Captain Pike one, I thought was kind of brilliant. I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah.
I know. It's like the chair was very, very specific.
Yes.
I thought.
Yeah. All right. So that's all that I got actually for the references section. So not as nearly as many as we've gotten in the last couple of episodes. So like I say, I like this a lot better. They were not trying so hard. So
yeah,
I think this was a great balance of it. I don't think that anything they put in there was anything that you needed. And, so they weren't depending on it. It was good. Perfect balance. So in terms of that, I don't think that this was maybe the best episode, but it's close. Like it was certainly the best since the first 3 for me. So anyway, okay. So other notes, Kyle, what do you have?
I mean, I kind of already kind of went into this. Was just like I agreed with some that was like Mariner was just kind of annoying in this episode. And actually, since we've had like our like LT and like some of other listeners like comments, it's like we obviously know that there's more to her story, and hopefully we'll see that. So I kind of went into where it's like, oh yeah, it's like she kind of just after having last episode, she like reminded me of Ensign Fletcher. And so it was just kind of like, it just was like, oh my gosh, this is like too much. It's like the stuff she's doing, it makes no sense. And, like at the beginning, it was like, oh, she's just being annoying. And we kind of get at the end, though, that it's like, okay, well, she's just trying to like not be like she's trying to play it down to her friend because her friend knows her and there's this whole deal, whatever. But it's like at the beginning, it's just like she's just like, it's like, oh, how is she in Starfleet? It's like, why is she doing this? Like, if she's like this, like best of her class, like everybody looked up to her thinking that like you would be the one that would have been captain by now. And then she's doing all this stuff and it just like, oh, okay, whatever. And then at the end, we're kind of like, okay, I guess there's something there. So yeah, I don't know. It just stuck up like that. If they don't do anything with this storyline and this is just it, then that's going to be a problem.
Yes, I agree.
And then the other part was just like the section specialists. I mean, I kind of enjoyed the whole. We have our episodes of Section 31.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen those in many, like many iterations of just like, oh, like like Bashir and O'Brien trying to like capture what I totally forgot his name, but whatever, trying to capture Section 31, like whatever, and do their thing. And it's like here we have this whole new group or new section or division, but I love that it is like it to me it's like it's stupid and it's silly, but it was fun. It was funny, and it was when like Boimler goes to the section specialist basically to say, hey, like they're trying to mutiny, and I want to try to like downplay this and become basically he wants to be the hero and whatever, and then he comes out and like sits there and says, yes, it's like Boimler told me everything. Brad Boimler, right here, Brad Boimler. It was just so funny.
It was, yes, I agree.
I thought that was like such a really fun, really easy, simple thing, but it was just like right before that he was like, oh no, it's like I hope they don't like find out like I'm tattling on them or like whatever. And it was just like Brad Boimler, oh yeah, this one right here, he's the one, so go after him. I don't know, that was just good easy humor.
Yeah.
And then last, I guess, is just which I guess we'll see, but there's always, I think with all of us Trekkies, we always have our little one-liners. We always have our inside jokes or all the stuff. And I'm wondering if Boimler's out of here is going to be like, if that might stick.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe that's why his name is Boimler in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, we'll have to wait and see, but I'm just like, I kind of want to see this later down the road as like an inside joke so that it kind of connects it all. And like, I don't know, it seems very specific to be like, okay, Boimler has a, like the
Boimler effect.
The Boimler effect. And then they're like, and he's like, boy me out of here. And then now it's being like, oh, like even Mariner was like, boy me out of here.
Yeah.
So I don't know. To me, it was a lot of fun. So I hope they run with it, and we hope we get to like hear like, little cue, maybe it's even the last episode or whatever. It just, I don't know. Those are the things that I think that, I mean, I don't know. There's so many. It's like, like Janeway, it's just like, I hope there's coffee in that nebula. It's like, I could go on, and I'm like, there's too much floating in my head, but like we all have those kind of one-liners, it's like all the stuff that comes from our Trek experience.
Right.
That I felt like this is like one of what's like, okay, I'm going to always remember that. And I hope this has the same kind of feel and same kind of thing. So I might be hoping too much, but I'm like, that's how I felt about this whole play on that.
Well, cool. I don't really have anything as mind-blowing on it, but just a couple of observations. I've been kind of mentioning these things as they come up. So the USS Osler, I think I already said this actually, was an NX 75300. NX basically means experimental. And of course, we have the NX-01, the first Enterprise was that. And then the other ship that we see is the USS Robideau, and that, like the Cerritos and the Merced we've already seen, is a California class. This one had red stripes with the NCC 12109. And unlike the other ones named after a California city, Robideau was a census-designated place, an unincorporated community in Riverside County, California. So it never was actually a city. It was a census-designated place. I always find that so weird. Since I moved to Tampa, I live in a census-designated place, which to me, I had never even heard of that before now. So anyway, basically means it doesn't have any city council or town council. It just, it's governed by the county. I think that's essentially what it means. And in July 2011, it actually became a neighborhood in the newly formed city of Jurupa Valley. I think I said that right, but Jurupa. So why didn't they call it the USS Jurupa? I don't know. Or Jurupa Valley. I don't know. But, and the last thing I will leave with is that the Borg smell like old trash bags, which I thought was really funny. And it almost made my yeses for being funny. But in final analysis, I wonder, well, how does Ramsey know what a trash bag smells like? Would they even have trash bags in the 24th century? Wouldn't they just throw that directly into the replicator?
Yeah, like
raw material or whatever, and it would just get sucked in and made into a nice juicy steak or something. Who knows? But it's just kind of funny. I didn't think of it until literally just as you were talking. How would she know what a trash bag smells like? But I thought it was kind of funny that they smell like trash bags. So I could just picture some of the stuff that I threw out last night from the fridge. So, and old socks and stuff like that. So anyway, that's it for our observations on this episode. So we do have some news and various other things. So let's move on to the shipwide announcements. Noah Hawley, who you may know from Fargo and Legend. He's a showrunner on those, and he was commissioned to script and direct a Star Trek movie that it sounded like was being shelved. Well, that movie is very much in play, despite it being shelved. Hawley spoke to Variety about it this week and saying that it would involve a whole new cast of characters, but hearken to franchise canon. And he compared it to the way he has made the Fargo television series. So interesting. So maybe it's kind of like a movie that's in the Star Trek universe, but not part of anything we've ever seen before, which makes me think that this would actually be perfect for a movie for CBS All Access, or we'll get to that in a minute. Speaking of that, I'm going to move around the stories a little bit because it has been officially announced that the new name for CBS All Access coming in 2021, after there had been some reports about it, is going to be Paramount Plus. So the announcement came from Viacom CBS this past Tuesday, and it says that it'll be rolled out internationally as well, starting with Australia, Latin America, and Nordic countries first, which is odd because I know that CBS All Access also exists in Canada. I know that you can't get the Star Trek, the current live Star Trek shows on it, but I know that it exists there. You can subscribe to it. So I was kind of surprised that it's not there. But then again, I didn't read the press release, so maybe it's there, but we shall see. Star Trek will be a part of the virtual New York Comic-Con in October, shortly before season 3 of Discovery premieres. So the lineup for that is starting Thursday, October 8th at noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time. And there will be exclusive conversations with the casts of Star Trek Lower Decks and Star Trek Discovery, and also some surprise guests. So I don't know what that's going to mean, but supposedly it's going to talk about both shows. Obviously, by that time, Thursday, October 8th is actually the day of the final episode of Lower Decks, and that's the week before Discovery comes back. So that's good. So it mentions that appearing at that will be the creator, Mike McMahon, Tawny Newsome, Jack Quaid, Noel Wells, Eugene Cordero, Don Lewis, Jerry O'Connell, Fred Tatasciore, and Gillian Vigman. So basically all of the main cast of Lower Decks. And at the Star Trek Discovery section of the panel, it will be Sonequa Martin Green, Doug Jones, Anthony Rapp, Mary Wiseman, and Wilson Cruz, as well as new cast members David Ajala, Blue Del Barrio, and Ian Alexander. And they will also be with co-showrunners and executive producers Alex Kurtzman and Michelle Paradise. So that's who is going to be doing those.
Nice.
So
nice.
Yeah. So that anyway starts at noon Eastern Time on October 8th. So, and last couple things, Star Trek won a couple of awards this week. It won the 2020 Heritage Award from the TV Critics Association. So that's cool. I believe that may have been for the original series. I don't know. Yeah, so it is to honor the original Star Trek. So it says, nice. TCA was proud to bestow the Heritage Award upon Gene Roddenberry's landmark 1966 sci-fi epic Star Trek in recognition of the groundbreaking series which brought the future to life, illustrating a unique vision that is equal parts hopeful and cautious as it explored issues of such as bigotry, religion, politics, sexism, and human rights through timeless stories of love, war, intrigue, and adventure in outer space, with the help of a strong cast that was among the first to feature an African American in a significant leading role. So cool. And lastly, Star Trek Picard's Absolute Candor won an Emmy Award. Well, not the episode. I guess you could say the makeup department won an Emmy Award this week for the Romulan prosthetic makeup that was featured in the episode Absolute Candor. So that's very cool. So it won the Best Makeup Award. So yeah. All right. So that's all we have as far as news. I don't know if there was anything else. Didn't catch anything else. But that's it for us. So why don't you tell people how to contact us?
All right. To submit your theories and feedback, go to talkthroughmedia.com/feedback, where you can submit text or audio. You can also call 216-232-6146 or email us at lowerdecks@talkthroughmedia.com. Post in our designated episode thread in our Facebook group, and you can find that at facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts. The deadline for season 1, episode 8 will be on our regular day and time, Friday, September 25th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. A great way you can support us is to share us on Twitter and Facebook, and you can find us at Twitter at Star Trek TTM. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Chalk3Media, where you can write a review. Share us on Facebook and retweet us on Twitter, especially when we post the new episode thread is out. Subscribe to us in Apple Podcasts or your podcast client of choice. While you're there, give us a rating or review.
Another way you can support us is through Patreon, and we should have a Patreon episode coming up, so we'll let you guys know. But at the time that we're recording this, we don't have it finalized yet. But just as low as $1 a month, you can get additional content from us for all of the podcasts within the Talk Through Media that focus on Star Trek. So we would like to thank our supporters: Clint McCollum, Lawrence Todd, James Robbins, Fred Petrie, that guy over there, Kyle McAdams, Kim Vogley, Brian Shiro, Christoph Leckleitner, Lee Radke, Aaron Mays, Michael Carrier, Stephen Chambers, Kevin Lyle, and Jeff Gentry. And it's coming up pretty soon in a few weeks. If you are listening to us on the Star Trek Picard cast feed and you watch or are planning to watch Star Trek Discovery Season 3, we recommend that you may want to subscribe to the Star Trek Discovery podcast feed instead, which also has the Picard and Lower Decks episodes. But when Discovery returns, it will be the only feed that has Discovery on it, because that was the one that started first. And so that one does not have, the Picard feed only has Picard and Lower Decks. And that was because we knew that there were some people that didn't like Discovery. So we put it on a different feed, and then we realized that maybe wasn't the way to go. So we ended up putting it on Discovery as well. So, but we're not going to go backwards. So just anyway, I'm saying much too much on this. So if you're going to watch Discovery, we recommend you switch over to the Star Trek Discovery podcast feed, unless, of course, you're on the all-inclusive Talk Through Media feed, which also includes Discovery, Picard, Lower Decks, Rebinge Deep Space Nine, The Walking Dead Talk Through, and Let's Talk Through. So that covers everything within the Talk Through Media network.
Yeah.
And we will be recording an episode of The Walking Dead Talk Through soon. So if you subscribe to us on there, you'll hear us coming back. We will definitely be doing something very, very soon. And we have to, because it's coming back. But anyway, we've got some things to talk about on there. So especially with the announcement of The Walking Dead ending. But we have more. So the next episode is Season 1, Episode 8. And it is titled Veritas. And I didn't know this, but I'm actually picking this up on Memory Alpha. So I don't know who has written it or directed it, but the summary that's on Memory Alpha is: Mariner, Boimler, Tendi, and Rutherford are caught off guard when certain aliens force them to testify about a series of apparently unrelated events. Interesting. So, and we see some of that in the coming soon clip that we see at the end of the episode. So until next time, I'm Brian.
And I'm Kyle.
Peace and long life.
Live long and prosper.